Look what I managed to get. We're back! Mahlzeit, Richie here again. Welcome back, and as you can see, bit by bit, fans are being allowed back in the stadiums here, back to the grounds to watch the football here in Germany, and I managed to get tickets for VfL Bochum's first game of the season at home against St. Pauli. Now, it's going to be a completely different football fan experience to the one that we know and love. And the first thing that was really weird was coming by car. We're parked here in that car park. I'm really not used to this. I'm used to coming on a match day and coming with public transport. Came by car, of course, because they're advising people to avoid public transport wherever possible, to avoid big build-ups of crowds at the stadium, around the stadium. And that got me thinking about what is it that I really love about German football and why the German Bundesliga is much better than the English Premier League. Here are my 5 reasons. As I say, this video is primarily going to be about my experience as a fan and not so much about the business of the sport or the organisation of the sport, because this is just really about my perspective as a normal everyday fan, paying my money, going through the turnstiles and watching the game. That said, point number 1 is a little bit more about the business of football and the management of football and how Germany does it a lot better than the English. In this regard, I think the numbers speak largely for themselves, and also if you just look at the performance of the national teams. How many times has the German national team won the World Cup and the European Cup? Compare that with the England national team's performance, and surely that's got to be the actual barometer, that's got to be the yardstick that judges whether a nation is successful at football or not. That has to be the peak. The international events, the national team and how successful they are. And why is it then that England does so badly in comparison to Germany? Well, it's got to be something to do with the way the leagues are organised. For example, the Premier League is a very successful league. It brings in a lot of money. It's very glamorous. It has all the TV income. It's watched throughout the world. And, you know, in England, they really do have some of probably the best world stars, but these are quite often expensively purchased foreign stars from all around the world. Who's getting a chance at youth level? The young English players are not really getting a level to break through into the top level of football. It's very difficult as a young player. Maybe it's improved over the last few years, maybe not. Tell me down below in the comments whether I'm right or wrong about this, but I have the impression that it's a lot easier for a young, promising, talented German footballer to break through the ranks and get a chance at first team football in the first Bundesliga, for example. Football is, of course, big business in England, and that's probably one reason why teams choose to import established, proven foreign talent rather than give the youngsters a chance, their own talent. But also, I think the statistics on coaching also have some bearing on this. Let's compare some statistics then. These numbers are from 2018. And in 2018, there were over 35,000 registered coaches in Germany. Compare that with the number in England of only 2,679. You certainly can't argue that the English are not a football crazy nation. We are just as enthusiastic about our football as the Germans. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there interested in coaching and getting their qualifications. So something is deterring them from taking that step. And I have to conclude that once again it's this: money. It's the price of it. Consider that in England, if you want to achieve a UEFA A-level certificate in coaching, you'd have to pay out something around £4,000 British pounds. Compare that to the price of the same qualification through the DFB, the German Football Association, where you would only be expected to pay around €800, and it's easy to see why people are being put off. So this is really affecting grassroots work and the quality of the game in England. Moving on then to my final 4 points. Points 2 to 5, as I say, are going to concentrate on the actual match day experience for a normal fan like myself, and I'm reflecting on why the experience here is much more enjoyable, much more authentic, feels like real football here in the Bundesliga, in the first and second divisions here, compared to the overly commercial plastic feeling experience in the Premier League and Championship in England. Point number 2 then is going to be about standing areas and also pricing. We still have in Germany large standing areas where the bulk of the fans go to watch the game, and that applies in the first division and the second division of the Bundesliga, whereas in the top 2 tiers of the English League, the Premier League and the Championship, this is something that has completely disappeared ever since the 90s. This of course has a big effect on the price of the tickets to the games, and I find although that football in general in the UK, in England certainly, is a little bit more expensive than in Germany, when it comes to purchasing the cheapest seat, there's not so much difference. But the big difference is, of course, if I have a standing area, if I can go and watch my team on the terraces, I can expect to pay as little as 12, 13, maybe around 15, might be the average, 15 or 16 euros for a standing area ticket. Certainly no more than 20 euros. Whereas if I go to a football game, take Sheffield Wednesday, my team in England as an example, I think the cheapest tickets for any match day are more than £25, so it's getting expensive. It is of course going to be a very different experience at the game, at these first games of the season, in these unusual times in which we live, because of course the ground can only be used to 20% of its capacity. That means in Bochum that at this game there are going to be only around a maximum of 5,000 fans, and of course the standing areas are closed. And of course normally I'd be right all the way over there. Our Ostkurve completely empty. Maybe somewhere up there. There I am. Luckily, my ticket only cost me 18 euros. I'm sitting in the area which is usually reserved for away fans, which is also going to be strange. It's going to be a very unusual experience, and it'll probably remind me of the experience of football in England again, sitting down with very little atmosphere. I'll talk a little bit more about the atmosphere later, but I'm going to move on to my point number 3 now, and it may seem a little bit silly at first, but it's beer. I'm going to talk about beer. Beer is just something that goes hand in hand with football for many fans. It's a traditional experience. Just as much as standing on the terraces is a tradition, so is having a beer with your friends. And there's a big difference between England and Germany, and I think Germany has an almost civilized approach, a much more civilized approach. You can't really drink beer at the football in England. In fact, alcohol was banned completely from most grounds, and is still banned from many grounds, not available in many grounds. And if you can get a beer, you can purchase it outside where the catering areas are, but you're not allowed to take your beer into the stands. Now, what difference that is going to make, I really don't know. It works perfectly well in Germany, and it's part of the game. Going on the terraces and enjoying a beer, okay, it might be in a plastic cup, but it's local good beer, usually from the local brewery. We get a little bit merry and we stand on the terraces together and have a good old sing-song, which moves me on conveniently to my point number 4, which is the atmosphere. That is the be-all and the end-all when it comes to the football experience for me. When I go to the football, I'm not really in a position to analyse football. If I want to analyse the football itself, actually really witness the game, then there's no better experience than sitting at home and watching it on the TV. I've got all the camera angles, I've got someone commentating, I see slow motion repetitions, I can really analyse and see an overview of the game. That's not why we go to the stadium. Yes, we go and we do actually watch the game, but we have one angle, we may miss something, we may be going to the toilet, we may be talking to our neighbour or whatever. It's not really what it's all about. It's about the atmosphere, it's about being there live and really experiencing it. The fact that we have standing areas and the fact that we are allowed to have a couple of drinks, get a little bit tipsy maybe, all contributes to a better atmosphere, all packed in like sardines on the terraces, standing together, singing together. And you also have groups of organised fans leading the songs and even choreographing certain routines to get the atmosphere going. All in all, the atmosphere in German football is so much better. It is the authentic, enjoyable football experience that we know and love. It's football as it used to be in England, and it's football as it's meant to be. Atmosphere is a bit strange, but that's to be expected. We're all spread about, weird, but you notice that everybody's kind of giving it their all. Everyone's really glad just to be back in the stadium and giving it their all, making a lot of noise. I actually expected it to be more of a one-off, but my feeling is now that I would come back. I'd definitely try and get to the next home game if it does go ahead with fans. Fingers crossed that we'll slowly but surely be let back in. So I've talked about what makes the football fan experience in Germany so much better than that of the football fan in England, but there's a why. Why is it so much better? And this is where I'm going to get a little bit political on you, and this is my theory as to why things in Germany are still so much better. And I'm going to make a controversial statement, and I'm going to say it's because of what is known as the ultras, the ultra groups, or maybe organised fan culture in general. Because my impression is that although there are still fan clubs in England, in English football, we don't really have anything with the same political power as fan groups here, organised fan groups here. I too am a member of a fan club which is actually registered as an official association, related of course to VfL Bochum. I joined because their main activity is actually arranging bus transport to away games at very good prices. But as I saw at a recent annual meeting, members meeting, there's a lot of political work that goes on. There's a lot of intercommunication with interaction with other fan groups from other areas of the country, and also the various different fan clubs, the registered fan clubs, get invited to talk directly to the club and have an influence on shaping football, the future of football. But I'm also going to argue that it's actually the ultras that we don't really have in England, that we do have here in Germany, that help preserve football the way it really should be. One common mistake that many people make is to mistake ultras for hooligans. Ultras and hooligans are two completely different animals. Hooligans use football as an excuse to get together with rival gangs and fight. That is their sole purpose. Ultras are not hooligans. Ultras, yes, they tend to be younger fans. They are often described as laut und unangenehm, so loud, vocal, and an uncomfortable presence for the authorities. They will indeed sometimes push the boundaries of what is legal and what is not legal. The debate about the use of illegal fireworks, for example, is a controversial one, but it's mainly done in the name of protest and in the name of preserving football for the everyday fan. Protesting against the commercial influences in football. So it's no wonder that those guilty of commercializing football, the Dietmar Hopps of this world, the people pumping big money into small clubs who have no respect and no understanding for the true traditions of German football, that they cynically employ a tactic of deliberately categorizing ultras and hooligans as the same. It's a cynical tactic aimed at turning fans against each other, dividing fans, portraying ultras as hooligans to turn the so-called normal fan against them, and to a large extent it actually works, but it's a total misunderstanding of the ultras, and I'm a big fan of much of the work that ultras do. Let me give you an example then. In the season 2021 to 2022, so not this season but next season, there will no longer be any games on a Monday evening. For several years now, because of Sky broadcasting, because of commercialization of football, there have been games taking place on a Monday evening. It's a very, very unpopular time slot for people going to the stadium themselves. It's been scrapped. And why? Because of constant protest. And who has been leading this constant protest? Most vocally, organising choreographed routines, protesting at games. The ultras groups, and they all interact with each other on a national level also. It's not to be portrayed like individual groups fighting against each other. Although they're from rival fans, there is a lot of intercommunication and organisation. Quite often ultras groups will release one common statement about certain issues of football and the state of the game. And at this point I'd like to make special mention of the Ultras Bochum, because it was their political dedication during the last decade that made quite a big difference to football fan culture as it is today, especially on our terrace, the Ostkurve in Bochum, because around 2014, I think it was, there was a new movement emerging, a new very undesirable right-wing movement, all part of the Hooligans gegen Salafisten, a largely anti-Islamic sentiment amongst fans with a right-wing persuasion. They were starting to get organised, and this presence was being felt more and more on the Ostkurve in Bochum. The so-called Brigade Bochum, I think they were called, were making themselves their presence felt, until the Ultras Bochum took a clear stance, distancing themselves and all normal fans from racism, from racist fans, with revealing a banner which was quite clearly against this group, against Hooligans gegen Salafisten. It even came to physical fights on the terracing, and since then the right-wing groups have pretty much completely disappeared. Certainly the organised right-wing racist groups have disappeared from our terraces in Bochum and have absolutely no influence anymore. And in my opinion, actions like that probably go further than any of the official kick racism out of football campaigns, which quite often just seem to be paying lip service to the whole idea of anti-racism campaigns. Whereas the Ultras really make a difference to our everyday life as fans of football. I'm going to conclude that one big part of why German football is the authentic traditional experience that it still is and continues to resist the influences of commercialization. It may be a losing battle long term, but I think we still have good organised fan culture, particularly the Ultras, that seem to be leading all the protests and resisting all the unpopular commercializing measures that really the everyday fan doesn't want to see. They're the reason why we keep pricing low, the reason why we keep standing areas, why we're still allowed to drink beer, and the reason why there will be no Monday night televised games anymore. This level of organised fan culture is unthinkable in England, and it's probably the reason why football has been commercialised so quickly and has been removed so far from that authentic experience that I associate with football, and why I have to conclude that I am much happier here as a fan of German football than I would be in England. The season can continue like this. Well, thank you very much if you've made it this far. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. I hope you found it interesting. Do let me know in the comments down below if you agree with everything that I said. Maybe is there something that I missed, important factors that you'd like to add? Maybe you disagree with me. Do you think German football fans are fighting a losing battle? Do you think ultimately we will have the same commercialized product as they do in England? Or do you, like me, like to think a little bit more positively? Will our organised fan culture help preserve football and keep it the people's sport that it always was? All in all, if we forget about the result for a second, a lot more pleasant experience than expected. In the end, we got out really quickly. We weren't waiting more than 10 minutes, I don't think. Even though it was staggered, we were expecting maybe wait there for an hour, even an hour and a half. We got out pretty quickly, so all we've got to do now is drive home, which is a bit weird. It was weird atmosphere, not the same, not the proper German football experience that we all know and love. Some things never change. German football remains the best in the world, and VfL Bochum remain the best team at giving away a seemingly invincible lead. We're going to drive home. If you did like the video, please remember to give me a thumbs up, like the video, and if you haven't already done so, if you want more content like this on life in Germany, German culture, aspects of German culture and politics, subscribe to the channel so that you're notified of every new video that I release. And at this point I would also like to thank my patrons, the people that support me on Patreon with a small monthly donation. Thank you very much. If that interests you, there is a link down below. Check out what I have on offer there. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video here on YouTube. Thank you very much for watching. Macht's gut, Leute.